Hello, I'm Hannah Martin from Talent Ladies Club, and I'm delighted today to have with me Nicole from Supermum Startup. Hello, Nicole.
Hi, Hannah. Hi, everyone.
Do you want to quickly tell everyone what it is that you do? What is Supermum Startup?
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to say thanks for having me here. I'm really looking forward to doing this, sharing this with everyone. I founded my first company in 2000 before all the cool stuff was out, like Lean Startup and all these processes to help startups um, do it in a quick way, quick, fast way to get to the final product. And we felt most of the time like octopuses on roller skates, doing a million and one things at once. And now I help early stage entrepreneurs follow the pivot process, which takes them from having an idea in their head to actually launching it into the world in 5 simple steps. So I've founded Supermum Startups, and I help mums, and I also help people leaving the 9 to 5 job.
Okay, that sounds brilliant. And today you are going to take us through that pivot formula, aren't you?
Yeah. So today I'm going to walk you through the 5 steps of the pivot plan. And what I'm hoping that the listeners can get out of this, that what you can get out is actually an idea of what the next step that you need to take is, wherever you are in your business process, and also a few tips and techniques that you can take away and implement yourself um, to get to the next stage of where you are.
Okay, that
So,
sounds brilliant. So I am going to hand over control to you, and I'm going to close down my video screen so I can just watch and enjoy it. So, oh, so
mm.
hold on a second. Okay. So there you go, Nicole. Have you I've handed over to you now.
All right. Let me see if I've got control. Have you handed the screen over to me, Hannah? Because I can't seem to move the presentation.
I've given control to you. Can you not do
Oh,
it?
so strange because I could do it a minute ago. There we go. Okay, got it. All right, sorry everybody, please bear with me. This is the first webinar I've ever done, so it may not be purely smooth sailing. I'm actually going to switch off my camera at the moment, and then I'll come back on when we do the Q&A at the end. Right, so I'm doing this webinar on validating your business idea. And there are numerous ways that you could go about it, but the point of this is to do it without spending thousands of pounds or months, wasting months of your life building something that nobody wants to buy. So, not sure why it's not going to the next screen.
Hey, Nicole, if you click on the slide once and then try to move it. If not, I can move it for you if you like.
Yeah, I've done that. It worked a minute ago. Is that you? Yeah, for some reason it's not working.
That's okay. I'll tell you what. I'll take back. If you let me know every time you want me to change a slide, I'll change it for you.
Okay, that's very strange. Okay, if you could just move on to the next slide, thanks. Okay, so we all know that most startups fail. 9 out of 10 startups don't actually get traction and businesses land up closing. And I think the main thing we want to find out is what makes the other 10% succeed. So the reason why startups fail after huge amounts of studies have been done is because people build the wrong product. They actually build something that people don't want to buy. And if you look at the 10% of startups that actually do succeed and make something of themselves, the process that they follow is actually a process of continual testing and pivoting around their product. So they don't spend, lock themselves in a room for 10 months and build something and then try and push it onto the world. They actually go through a process of getting continual feedback from their customers to build something in a way with the customers that they really want to buy. So can you go into the next one? Right, so what we want to do is look at the difference between large organizations and startups. So people have often assumed that startups or small businesses are just a small version of a really large enterprise and try and apply the same sort of management techniques to their new business. But what they found is actually that they are completely different beasts. So you've got completely different risks and assumptions that you're dealing with a new business. And some of them are what I've listed here. So will my customers want what I've got to offer? Will they actually pay? And if they will pay, how much will they pay? These are we don't know when you first start, when you get a business idea. You want to know if you can actually deliver what it is that they want to buy. And can you reach them? Do you have the marketing channels to get to the right people who have this problem? You need to know, will your business be sustainable? Will your revenues outweigh your costs? And how can I protect myself from being easily copied? And a lot of these assumptions or risks that they have in startups are not part of the big businesses, which is where Lean Startup actually comes in and helps to de-risk these. So I use the 5-step pivot process. Can you go to the next one? Thanks. To go through and actually de-risk each of these questions. So the first step that we're going to go through is the P, which is the planning phase. And here we do a plan of your business model. And I'll go into this in more detail once we get to the next slides. But this is not a full 60-page business plan that a lot of people, when they get an idea, they rush off to start building it. It's not that. It's actually a 1-page business model plan. The next step we're going to do would be interviewing your customers. So finding out what problems they actually have that you can help solve. Because if you start your business, if you build it on the foundation of solving a problem for somebody, that gives you a really solid start to a business that you know they're going to be willing to part with their money for your product. So the next stage will be validating your offer. And this is where things get quite exciting. You'll actually start putting something together to find out whether you can deliver what it is that they need. The 4th step we do is then your offer price testing. And this is where we go through a process of figuring out what price point you should be offering your product at or your service at, and what range you can work within. And the last thing is testing your MVP. So this is when you're actually going to launch something out into the world and start getting feedback on it to create the best possible product. And this is when you'll actually have this level of confidence because you know that there are paying customers, you know how much they're willing to pay, and you know that your product is actually wanted. And this full process can take between 6 and 8 weeks to go through, depending on how often you would have to pivot along the way and change what your offer is. Okay, so can you go to the next one? There we go. So the first step is planning. Now, there are 3 types of planning that I actually do with my entrepreneurs. The first 2 are things that I just choose to do myself because I find them extremely useful. And the first one is the personal success plan. And when we do the personal success plan, and I would highly recommend this to anybody who gets a business idea and starts working on it, is to actually figure out what your level of personal success is. So I'll give you an example. A lot of people who are leaving the 9-to-5 job have an idea that they are successful once they make enough money that equates to what they were making in their job before. So they can say to themselves, even if this business idea is not perfect, or even if it doesn't work exactly as it is, what I want to do is make that level of money, which is absolutely fine, and money is actually quite an easy thing to track. However, some other people might say that money is not a big driver for them, and they actually want to, a lot of mums want to create a work-life balance, or they want to help X number of people by the end of the year, for example. And what happens is once you've defined that and gone through the exercise of knowing what your personal success is, you're not as tied to the solution that's in your head. You're more tied to delivering whatever it is that the world actually needs, getting that out into the world. And it also acts as your sort of North Star for when things get tough. You can always go back to this inherent driver that you've got. And the other thing I really recommend is a work-life calendar. So most of the people that I assume that are on this call are actually really busy people. A lot of mums and people, working in the 9-to-5 job don't have a lot of time to spend on this. And it's really important to know when you can actually assign time to work on your business idea that doesn't jeopardize your personal life, your family life, all these other things that are important to you. Because this is why burnout is also so rife in the startup world. So I think doing these two personal exercises is really important. Then we get onto the real business side of things, which is the real meaty side that I love to do, which is the business model plan. So the business model plan is what we do now. If you could just go to the next slide, Hannah, thanks. So I said do your business model plan and your full business plan later, or maybe even never. And some people are quite shocked to hear this because we think, or we are taught, usually if you get a business idea, the second step is to go and do a full plan. Create your marketing plan, deep financials, get on top of your full understanding your product specifications. The problem with this is that as you go into step 2 or step 3 of the process of actually, the startup process, you might invalidate everything that's in your plan. You might actually find that you need to make so many changes that you spend weeks of your life creating the perfect plan that actually just lands up in the bin. So what we do is look at the one-page business model plan to start with. And the business model plan is a living document, meaning that you don't write it once and frame it and put it on the wall. You write it up, and as you go through the process of launching your product, you will continually update your business model plan and improve it to get to from plan A of what is in your head right now to creating what your customers really want. Okay, so the next screen has got an example of the business model plan that I use, which is the Lean Canvas created by Ash Moria. And the reason why I use the Lean Canvas as the business model plan is because this is really focused on the customer's problem, on solving somebody's problem. So as I said before, if you can start your business with the idea that you're actually going to help people solve a problem in their life, you've actually got a really solid foundation for getting started. So to go run through the whole Lean Canvas would actually take me too long to do it. But I will be sending out a blog soon, a blog post on this over the next few weeks for anybody who's interested in that. And what I'd say is you can find these online. You can go ahead and give it a bash, create your own Lean Canvas with your business idea. The only thing I'd say is I highly recommend you running through it with somebody else who is not invested or tied to the idea. And the reason why is because if you do your business model plan on your own, you'll actually find yourself clarifying the thoughts that are already in your head without saying, hang on, is it actually going to work that way? What will customers think of this? So I would just say maybe do it with somebody who's not invested in the business model, in your business idea yourself. Okay, so that's our first planning session. And any questions you can just ask me at the end. We can just move on to the next screen. So for step 2, this is where we interview customers. And this is probably the most difficult step of the whole process. And it's actually counterintuitive to what we want to do. When we get a business idea, we're actually, as entrepreneurs, we're so excited to go ahead and build the product and get what's in our head out into the world. We often don't really think of the customer who's actually going to be potentially paying for it. But the reason why this is the most important step is that if you can speak to these people and find people with the problem that you're trying to solve, you'll actually be able to find your first paying customers in this group. So an example of your early adopters. Your early adopters are a segment of your customer group who are actually trying to solve the problem that they have already. So I'll give you an example. So there was a business idea that I was working on with somebody for a food service to help mums weaning their children onto solid foods. So the idea was to make it easier for mums to do this and possibly have a delivery box. That was the idea at first, that there could be a delivery box that helps mums track what their kids react to. So to find the mums that are actually weaning their kids or will be doing that in the near future, you have to think of where these mums will be. And so you start brainstorming. This is where you use design thinking. You'll start brainstorming where you can find them. So an example here was going to NCT meetups. And there you'll find a number of people with this problem. They're trying to wean their children at 6 months old, and they're having huge problems with going through the process smoothly. So we could do the customer interviews with them to find out what their real problems are. And in this step of interviewing your customers, the main thing is to not pitch your idea, which is also really difficult, because when you start speaking to somebody that's got the idea or the problem, it's so tempting to say, I can solve your problem for you with X, Y, Z, but that's not actually the benefit that you won't get the benefit out of the interview. So the point is for you to actually be listening and learning from your customers why they have this problem, what they're trying to do to solve it at the moment, and most importantly, what is the problem with the current services they've tried. So I've written here that we empathize with the 5 whys, and an example, going back to the weaning, is saying, for example, so what would you say is the hardest thing with weaning your child onto solid foods? And one example is a mum saying, well, the hardest thing is that, he doesn't want to eat the food, he ends up throwing it across the kitchen, and then I've got to clean all of this up and re-cook for another 2 hours, and that's, the problem. And then you ask why. So what you're trying to do with the 5 whys is actually get to the underlying emotions that this person experiences with this problem. So you say, well, why is that a problem? And the mum then says, well, this is a problem for me because I get really frustrated, with the baby. You say, I know it sounds silly, but why is getting frustrated a problem for you? And the mum will say, well, getting frustrated with him makes me angry and I lose my temper. So now you start to get to some real emotions that are happening. And then you say, why is losing your temper a problem? And the mum will say, then I'm angry with myself for what I've done. So you're getting to some real deep issues that this mum is dealing with. It's not just about weaning the baby or cooking the meals. It's actually deep problems that she's got to live with during the day. And that is what you want to try and understand from these customer interviews and get to the real crux of why people feel this. On the next slide, sorry, Hannah, is why the first sentence, their emotion is your marketing message. So without sounding, heartless, when they get to these emotions that they're saying that they're experiencing is where you're going to be able to start building up the marketing message. And why this is so important is it's a way for you to actually reach those mums. So somebody that's having a weaning problem that sees or had a bad day that day with weaning her son onto solid foods might see an advert pop onto Facebook saying, are you struggling with weaning? And she thinks, no, I'm not, so she ignores it. However, if she sees an advert pop up that says something, about, are you feeling, unconfident about weaning your child? Are you feeling like a terrible mum about it? She might go, actually today, this morning, that's how I felt. I'm going to see what does this company have to offer. So you'll actually be able to engage with your customers a lot more by getting these emotions. And the other thing of these interviews, the other important point is to find out what they do now and what's missing. So for example, a mum who's doing weaning, she may have gone out and bought, all the Annabelle Carmel books and read all of those. And when you're speaking to her, you'll say, what have you done so far? And she says, I've bought the books. And you say, well, what was wrong? What did you find was missing from that? And she might say, it was all great that I knew what to cook, but I didn't get the right advice on how to manage myself, for example. So all of these interviews will start turning you to the direction of finding the niche within that customer segment of where your product can actually fit and what problem you can be solving isn't currently being solved in the rest of the world. Yeah, okay, can we move on to the next one? So what we do this is step 3 now. We're moving on to validating your offer, and this is where it gets really exciting because we start to create. So we've gone through step 2 and we've talked to the potential customers and we've found out what their problems are, and now we start to create the customer problem board. And I use a corner of my home office, just is covered with post-it notes. Whenever I'm building a new product or thinking of a new business idea, I actually go do the interviews and I keep them all these post-its up saying what problems came out of each interview. So, and what emotions were tied to those problems. 2 people may have the same problem, but they might experience different emotions out of it, and it's important to track, who's experiencing what. I also then will keep a list of which channels they're trying and what deficiencies are in those channels at the moment. So one of the way that I do it is I use different color post-its. So for example, my problems will all be in pink post-its, and underneath there I'll have my yellow emotion post-its tied to them, and then say what channels they've tried already and what's missing. And the brilliant part about doing this is that you'll actually start to see patterns and repetition. You'll start to see people coming to you with the same problems. You'll start to see people talking about the same emotions that they feel. And you'll start to, the most important thing is starting to see similarities in deficiencies. So what is missing in the world? If you are, trying to wean babies, what is that one little niche? If you're trying to help mums wean their babies, what is that one little niche that you can target? Is it actually with what they cook? Or is it with how they feed the babies? Or is it with preparing the food? Or is it with dealing with, the aftermath of baby throwing the food all over the kitchen? So looking for the deficiency in what's out there. Okay, so the next slide, thanks. And the exciting thing about that, finding the deficiencies, you'll actually start to be able to formulate what offer you can put out there. So once you start to come up with what offer you can create to fill that niche, you then look at what is the best channel that you can use to test your solution. So different business types will have different benefits of using different channels, and also different channels have different cost and different reach ratios. So what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, you are going to use a Facebook ad to see the response that people have from your business idea. You'll be able to reach, possibly 100,000 people, but your cost might be very high to run that for a long period of time, or it might land up being very low for the size of the market you want to run it for. You might find that for your business, it's free to go and speak to people again and go back to people who had the problem and offer them your solution, but your reach might be very low, so you might only have 10 people to go back and speak to. So what you need to do is, this is where you'll list all of your different channels and have a look, analyze what the cost and the reach of each of them are to choose what the best way forward is. And here I highly recommend using online, so creating some sort of online offer. Leveraging the power of the internet in this stage is so important and useful. You can create landing pages and use Google ads, Facebook ads, Bing ads, blog posts, a number of different ways that you can actually get it out there. And what you try and do here is get a sense for how people are engaging with your offer. Are they interested? Are they actually clicking through? Or are you getting zero response? Then you've got to go back to the drawing board. Right, so the next stage is your offer price. So once you've done validated those offers, so you've created something, tweaked it a little bit, starting to get a good feedback from the market that people are interested in what you've got to offer, we actually start to attach a price to it. And this, for me, is one of the most exciting parts of the whole process. And the reason why is because I think pricing is something that's quite tricky to do well. And I love working on pricing products because it's a bit of a science. It's a mix of psychology and science. But what we'll do here, we're trying to figure out is, will they pay for your offer? And this is where you'll get your first actual paying customers coming to you. So I've combined a whole lot of sources that do pricing to come up with a strategy where you'll actually look at, just start doing a bit of market research. A lot of people think that you jump into market research a lot earlier, but for me personally, I think you can get really distracted with what's going on out there. But now is when market research becomes quite important. You're finding out what is actually on offer out there that's similar to your offer, and what kind of prices are they offering. And you start on the psychology side. You need to understand how people view the offers that are out there, and how you can position your own offering within that range. Okay, next one. Thanks. So here's where we find your optimum starting price. Your optimum starting price will be, as I said, within the range of what's on offer out there, and it's often a price that you are most comfortable with. So what I usually say to entrepreneurs is to double it. Whatever that price is in your mind, you double it. And for female entrepreneurs especially, I would say double it again. And the reason why is it gives you a range from where you can start testing your product based on the market research to where you probably will land up selling your product at once it's a final version. And this allows you to then do different tests and start to get a feedback on who's going to pay what for the product. Okay, the next one. Thanks. So now we get on to step 5. Once we've got the offer that we know people want, and we've got the price that we know that they want to buy it, that they're willing to pay, we don't go out and create the perfect product. We create something called an MVP, which is your minimum viable product. And I love this quote by Reid Hoffman, which is that if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. So in other words, don't go and spend 3 months building the perfect product to release it and see actually you misunderstood one of the assumptions, or you were getting some of the feedback you were getting, you didn't quite get a handle on it. Rather, create the smallest version, the quickest way for you to get feedback from your customers about what they love and hate about your product. And what this minimum viable product process actually does is it allows you to create the perfect product with your customers. Instead of creating what's in your head and pushing it out onto the world, you're actually engaging with your customers and building something that they love. And what this leads to is then they will then refer you on, because they love the product so much and it's really doing what they want it to do. They will refer you on, and you'll start to create a business that starts to scale itself, which is really exciting. Okay, the next screen, thanks. So minimum viable product, for those of you who haven't heard of the term before, is just the quickest way, the smallest, quickest product you can, or service you can provide, that allows you to get valuable, meaningful feedback from people. So you could put a product out there, for example, with 100 features, but if you don't have a feedback loop included where you can get the feedback from your clients and what they love and hate, you're not going to know what to improve. So a minimum viable product on its own is not nearly as good as a minimum viable product with some sort of feedback loop. And again, the online world makes this feedback for us to include in a lot of products, which is fantastic. The last slide, or the second last slide, is just the full process that we use, which is to build something, measure it, in other words, get feedback from your clients, learn from the feedback, and then build some more. So this is an iterative process that you go through, building up the product as you go, instead of the one big thing. And as you're learning from the feedback, you're also pivoting on your business model, on your product, and you're perfecting it as you go along. So as I said before, this full process, you can do it over sort of 6 to 8 weeks. If you try and cram this into 1 week, you're not going to get the depth of quality of, that you would over doing it over 2 months. And if you do follow this, you get a really solid foundation for building a product and building a business that people adore, which is the ultimate goal, I think, in doing this. And where you save months of your life is by not building the wrong thing, and thousands of pounds for your money is not building the wrong thing, that when you launch it, there's just crickets and not one person comes to buy it. So following this process gives you that confidence and that comfort that you're doing the right, building a solid business. And then the last slide, I've actually just got this one little quote to leave you with, which I love as well, which what good is an idea if it remains an idea? Try, experiment, iterate, fail, try again, change the world. And I love that. It kind of takes the pressure off that you don't have to be perfect, but you do need to be moving and you do need to be trying things and going in the direction that you want to move in. Okay, I think it's back over to you, Hannah, for the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Nicole. That was brilliant. Just before we have a chat now, if anyone's got any questions, please write them in the box on your top right-hand corner of the screen. You should have a control panel, and you can see there's an option there to ask questions. So if you want to ask Nicole any questions about the process or about your own business, please do ask and we'll get to them. Thank you, Nicole. That was really, really useful. I learnt loads as well. It sounds like a really simple but quite a powerful process.
Yeah, I think that's the idea, is to not overcomplicate things. And also this process that I've talked you through is actually used today by most of the global startups that are growing and trying to scale. And when you go to places like Google Campus, where all the entrepreneurs are testing their new ideas, this is the type of process that they are following nowadays. And I find it just so refreshing to have this sort of guidance, because when you start a new business, you feel like you've got 10 million things to do each day, and it can be really overwhelming. But having this process can keep you really focused and I think get you to the final result a lot quicker as well.
Yeah, that's true. I absolutely agree on having a process, because otherwise it's very easy to get lost. And what I really love as well is that it's not about what your own preconceptions are about what's good about what you do and what's bad. It's actually genuinely testing it with people who will be your customers.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the biggest problems, is that companies that are built without that interaction with customers, 9 times out of 10 will be a flop. They'll be a failure. And there's two different, some companies build product-centric companies where they focus on the product, and others look at the customer. And it is, the customer-focused companies are the ones that are much more successful than the ones that aren't.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. I've got a question here from Erin. She says, what if when you are interviewing customers, they ask what your product and pricing is at that stage? If you have nothing ready, do you risk losing them as a prospective customer in the future because you appear disorganized?
Oh, that's a really brilliant question, actually. I love that. So I think that this is where, from a psychological perspective, we often, as entrepreneurs, are very tempted to show the world that we've got further than we actually have, because we're worried about that judgment that you're talking about. You're worried about losing them. And what I've found from working with numerous entrepreneurs is actually the public finds it really refreshing when people are humble and honest. And more importantly than that, if you are speaking to people and they really have a problem that you could possibly solve for them, they actually don't care. They want you to get there as quickly as possible, but they're not looking at you and judging you. People are so self-involved that they don't care about your product, to be honest. They care about solving their problems. As harsh as that sounds, that's how the human nature works. So if somebody has a problem that they are trying to solve, they will give you the time to talk to you. They won't judge you as harshly as you think, and you won't lose them because you've actually started a conversation. Once you've started the conversation with them and you've given them some light of hope that maybe you can solve the problem for them, they'll be very happy for you to come back again in 2 weeks or, the next week with a proposed solution. And I think they'd rather that you bring the right product back than you bring the product today, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And what I would say as well, how I would approach it is I would say to people, I'm planning a product. and I'm getting feedback on it before I finish it. So they know that you are part of the way through something, that something exists, but you're being honest and saying, I'm planning a product. Before I complete it, I want to make sure it's got everything that you need in it. So can I ask you some questions? And then you're being really open with them up front and managing their expectations. And you can always say to them, would you like me to send you more details when it's completed? And then you've already got the first person on your list, hopefully a potential customer.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you do the interviews, another thing I really recommend is taking a script with you for those sorts of problems. So when you do actually go and speak to the customers, how I would structure the script is saying exactly what Hannah said there, saying I'm trying to solve this problem, you know, and I'm working on it. In other words, I'm in the beginning stages, and and you put it more onto them. So what is your biggest problem with achieving this? And then see how open they are to talking about it. If somebody is not very open to talking about it, they often don't actually have that problem, so you may need to move on to somebody else. But as Hannah says, if they do speak to you, you've potentially got your first customer there.
Erin says thank you. Dania, sorry Dania if I've pronounced your name incorrectly, says thank you, this is great advice. Can you give more examples of how you find potential customers to interview? Are there any databases that you go to?
That's also a great question. So there are two places to find your early adopters. The one place that you can look is online, where you actually look on Facebook groups and forums and things like that. So let's say, for example, you are starting a coaching business for moms returning to work. There are a lot of groups that are currently serviced, and you can join them. But where you have to be very careful of with the online groups is not to go in and just try and take information. You need to actually be a part of the group and give something to the group before you can actually ask, for feedback. But you can have a look at, what repetitive problems people mention in there. And another thing is the other option is then your face-to-face interviews, which are, much better. You get a much better quality. And that's when you think about where are the people with the problem you're trying to solve actually, where do they congregate? So I don't have any online databases with it. It's more of a creative process of thinking about your problem or your potential customers and picturing a day in the life of where they would go. So for example, if it's if your customer is young mums, they could be at NCT or they could be at the baby conferences. If you've got students that are your potential clients, going at lunchtime when they're not very busy to a university campus, you'll find people there. I don't know if that's helpful.
If it's not, Dania, do feel free to ask further. And it reminds me actually your story. Do you remember the story about Innocent when they first started out and they went to a market and they sold some juices and they said to people to put the cup into a bin that says yes or no, whether they should start up a business. And that's a great way of like testing, getting some feedback from real live people, isn't it? I don't know if it's true or not, but it makes a great story. Erin also asks, any advice on keeping your idea unique and avoiding others copycatting or stealing it?
That's also a very good one. So I think this is where a lot of people are tempted to kind of phone a lawyer and get trademarks and all these sorts of things done. But the problem of people copying it is actually much greater than that. Even with a lot of that intellectual property protection, some sort of copying can go on. I think if you are servicing a niche market, people have a particular problem, it's very unlikely that a lot of other people are going to be doing exactly the same thing. Until you get to the point of really scaling your business to become something huge, it's very unlikely that other people are trying to copy it, to be honest with you. If somebody else is doing something, if you carry on with your business idea and as you're going, you find that somebody is doing something similar, this may be a time that you need to sort of make some changes and pivot. But in terms of protecting yourself, nowadays with the internet out there, a lot of things are sort of very easy to access, which is why they say you've got to keep moving fast and you've got to have a strong customer base to start with before you actually launch. It also depends on the type of business that the type of product that you're building. So I've worked with some people who are building software products who build in a number of strategies or ways into their coding that you can't actually copy the code itself, but that doesn't mean to say you can't copy the idea. And I think that's part of the startup world. What you need to remember though is somebody copying your idea does not mean that they're going to do it better than you. I think it's the founder's passion for solving the problem that will more likely make it the more successful business.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would say also, if someone is so lacking in creativity and idea that they have to steal yours, it's unlikely they're going to have what it takes to actually get that product to market or service and kind of navigate this journey that we're talking through here about pivot, because there's a lot of work you need to put into this. And simply stealing an idea doesn't necessarily mean they're going to find the right audience or know how to talk to them or even shape that idea properly, is there?
Yeah, absolutely. And understand the customers. So a lot of the time, as entrepreneurs, we try to solve problems in our life that we've experienced ourselves, which means that, or you've had some experience with somebody close to you. So it means that you've got a really thorough understanding of it. So for somebody else to come in and just jump on an idea is often quite hard. And especially from what you said, Hannah, which is the perseverance to push through the tough times. And not many people will have that if they've just gone and copied your idea.
Absolutely. It doesn't, it doesn't mean to say that they're copying, it's going to be any good. But I would say don't let that fear stop you from talking about your idea, because as Nicole is saying, it's really important that you get your idea out in the world and you get feedback on it. And the worst thing you can do is trying to be precious about it and protect it and not expose it to that really early feedback and revision, because then you risk having quite kind of an untested and young idea. Do get out there, be brave and talk to people, and don't worry if they do try to copy it. Not many people, there's very few people that are that lacking in morals and ideas that are going to do it. Denise said, thank you. I think you made me realise this is a thinking outside the box activity. How do you avoid annoying people? As I'm thinking, what do they get out of being questioned?
Are you talking about the customer interview step?
I think so, yeah. So people will be thinking, why should I help you answering these questions? You're just taking up my time.
Yeah. Okay, that's also that's a good point, because we often assume that nobody's interested in listening to us. But if they do have a problem, then people find it so refreshing, and they are so willing to help you because they have this problem that they need to solve, or they're trying to currently solve. So I think that's why it's really important about who you speak to. So defining your early adopters that you speak to first doesn't mean just speaking to any, Nancy on the street. It means actually finding people with the problem, trying to solve it, and they will then give you the time. So one way that I've done this before is standing in Liverpool Street Station, trying to find people in the 9 to 5 and interview them. And I had the experience exactly what you're talking about, which was, nobody wants to stop and talk to me. They were ignoring us and they just wanted to get on their train and get home. So you have to think a little bit more creatively, as you say, outside of the box, and think, where are these people, not in a rush? So where do they have time to share with you? Because, you can't, if somebody's got to go and fetch their child from school, you can't expect them to really stop and give you a long chat. And the other thing is the way that you approach them in the beginning. So it is really tricky to do these customer interviews. But for the people with the 9 to 5 job, I've found, as a team, we found that going at lunchtime, where people have a little bit more time, they're not in as much of a rush, and queuing. So we went to places like Eat Queues, and there were some food markets around Liverpool Street Station, which was perfect for us because people are waiting to order their food or waiting to get it. They've actually got literally nothing else to do for 5 minutes. And then they're very open to listening to us. And it's the way that you approach it. So it's not me forcing myself on them or you forcing your idea down their throat, but rather mentioning the problem that you're trying to solve and seeing if anybody has this problem. The biggest thing is if you start speaking to 20 people and nobody's interested in speaking to you about it, you may not actually be solving a problem. You may have an idea that maybe needs a little bit more work before you speak to them. So that would be a big question. But look for people who have the problem, where they congregate, and when they have some free time. Generally standing around in queues is a great one.
Thank you. That's a really, really good tip. Thank you. I can't see any more questions. If anyone does have any, they've got a couple more minutes to ask them. And if we haven't answered any questions fully, please do let us know. In the meantime, you have got, I think you've got a free offer, haven't you, for people listening?
Yes, so I've got a checklist of the process that we can send out, and basically it just gives the questions and points that you need to think through for each of the phases that you can go through to kind of give you the guidance to have a go at them. And I'll be sending, or Hannah, you'll be sending that out, I think tomorrow, won't you?
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'm going to send a recording of this out to everyone who wasn't able to make it or people who want to listen again. And with that recording, I will add a link in the email so people can download that free checklist. And I'm certainly going to download it myself. It sounds really good. I really enjoyed your talk.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
But we don't have any more questions now. So thank you very, very much, Nicole. That was really, really interesting. Lots and lots of useful tips there. And I will thank you everyone who's listening. I will send out a playback, as I said, with a link to Nicole's checklist.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Nicole.
Bye.
Bye.